All right, YouTube, I get people constantly telling me that I'm wasting my vote if I support the Libertarian Party, that somehow a vote for, Gary Johnson or whoever happens to be the Libertarian Party nominee, that because I'm not voting for Trump, it's a de facto vote for Hillary Clinton. Um, I'll point out a few things here. First and foremost, the if you vote for X, then Y wins thing doesn't work on me at this point. I've become so disenfranchised with the two-party system that that line is used by both parties to draw in people that are sort of on the fringes of being a partisan. That is, they lean more one way or the other, or they don't have any strong feelings about either the GOP or the Democratic Party. They simply have negative feelings for one of the two, and the other side is trying to get their vote. Essentially, it's a vote not for a specific candidate, but against the alternative. I'm not on the fringes of either party. I'm not a partisan in the sense of supporting either of the two parties. I'm an independent voter, right in the middle. I'm supporting the Libertarian Party not because I'm some sort of lifelong firebrand libertarian, but because I believe they've got the best answers to the problems that I see around us. As far as people telling me, for instance, well, the Libertarian Party believes in more open borders and will be flooded with immigrants. First and foremost, the executive, were for instance Gary Johnson to become the president, he wouldn't be able to unilaterally open the border anyway. It's when you talk about growing a party that's not in power, it's incremental. That is, the Libertarian Party will not win this election. It's not going to happen. Gary Johnson's obviously not going to be the next president of the United States. But if the party achieves the critical threshold nationwide, that is enough votes to qualify in the next election to actually, for once, participate in the debates, be on the ballot, and so forth, then it's no longer at such a significant disadvantage. By that same vetting process, libertarians, I believe, with more pragmatic views towards the border situation, would be the ones that would take up the banner of the party. So I don't have anything particularly on that issue to worry about. Also, why are people assuming that immigration is my primary focus here? I think people have made some assumptions here. The first assumption that they've made is that I'm a Trump fan. Even when I say I'm not, I voted for Trump in the primaries because I realized it was going to be fairly close between Trump and Kasich, and I figured that'll help spur him on. In such a close situation, every vote actually does count in the primaries. And so, yes, I voted for Trump in the Republican primary. We have an open primary here. But that doesn't mean I'm a lifelong GOPer, that I'm just going to fall in line, regardless of what Trump says. I am well aware of the fact Hillary is a lifelong liar. I know that. There's no way in hell I'd vote for Hillary. So, Trump fans, don't worry. And also don't worry because Trump is almost certainly going to be the next president. So don't worry. You have nothing to worry about, I believe. I am well aware of the fact that Trump manipulates the voters. He's already partially reneging on some of the things that he said before. I fully expect when elected, which I expect he will be, I fully expect a wall to be built because it's not a draconian thing. It's not that difficult to do. It's well within our capability to build a wall on our border, finally, which is really akin, essentially, to simply completing a fencing system that was already begun long ago and never got finished because nobody had the balls to complete it. They didn't want to allocate the funds. They didn't want to deal with the states that the wall would go through. They didn't want to deal with the perceived backhanded insult of Mexico and so forth. At the same time, look at what Vicente Fox said. He's going back on it as well. He essentially has gotten to the point where he's like, okay, you'll have your fucking wall and we'll pay for it because I just want you to not wage a trade war on our economy because our economy will get crippled and the U.S. wouldn't really fucking care. However, I look at it a different way. Fundamentally, why are these refugee crises and economic migrants, why do they exist in the first place? In the case of Mexico, a lot of that migration and South and Central America coming up through Mexico, it's because of the drug war. Well, if you want to solve the problem, addressing the symptom of mass immigration is not a solution. It addresses the symptom. It doesn't actually help to stabilize the situation. It's just sort of a bulwark against outright invasion that ultimately is pretty much meaningless. People will literally go around the wall, tunnel under the wall, and ultimately it'll just make a little more expensive for people to enter the country. I think we do need a border wall, but I mean, as far as restricting the movement of people across that border, I think we can argue over what form that should take. I lean more towards libertarianism on it. But if you want to really nip it in the bud, as far as our only major physical border we've got a problem with goes, simply wipe out the cartels by ending the drug war. Trump has spoken of keeping medical marijuana legal. That's fine. That's for a Republican, that's outright progressive. I'll give him props for that. And he sort of waffled around on legalizing recreational marijuana. He's like, oh, well, we'll have to take a look at it. That indicates to me, by the way, he's in favor of legalization. He may not push the issue at first, but he'll try to get a coalition of his party on board if elected, and do so. To preempt the Democrats, I mean, it's a strategic move. It's also an economic move. It has nothing to do with his aversion to mass incarceration. It has to do with money, essentially, and it would take the form, probably, of what they tried to do in Ohio. It'd be corporate weed. It'd basically make a bunch of businesses spring up, people with the capital to invest in them, or people willing to take out a lot of debt and fund the banks would be the ones making the money. You wouldn't be able to just grow a couple plants in your backyard, unfortunately. I don't think that's the way we need to go, because I don't think the government has any right to legislate one way or the other on such things. I would extend that to alcohol. If you want to brew and drink your own beer, who gives a fuck? I don't give a damn. But immigration, that's just one issue. It's not the only issue that I care about. I'm worried about the surveillance apparatus. I don't support it. Trump does. That's probably my most major issue with Trump's platform. And that's one of the major things that really prevent, I mean, his outright support, his stark support of the surveillance apparatus, which doesn't work. It doesn't prevent terrorism. It's one thing to say bomb ISIS with atomic weapons. I might even cheer you on if you actually suggest this and follow through with it. Okay, unleash atomic fire on ISIS strongholds. I can maybe get behind that because, fuck it. Who gives a fuck? What's anybody else going to do about it? As far as, though, conducting surveillance, which is very expensive, unconstitutional, and does nothing on the entire domestic population, I can't get on board with that. That's a no-go zone for me as far as issues. The Libertarian Party has been fairly clear. We're willing to fight back against people that attack us, but we're not going to violate everyone's constitutional rights in order to fight them over here. It'd be a lot easier to gain access, fight them over there, or use other countries that we have trade relations with to do it for us on their own soil, because we shouldn't have to deal with that shit. Because largely our own interventionist foreign policies, I understand Trump's less interventionist than most of his contemporaries. Again, kudos to him for having some fucking common sense and being in the GOP. More common sense than Sanders and Hillary combined, I would say, on this issue. They're both interventionists. They're both war hawks. Trump's the peacenik up on stage. That's great for a change to see that happen. But he still is in favor of the kind of intervention. He's just framing it a different way. He's saying take the oil. He's not saying don't go in there. He's simply saying make it profitable to do so our economy doesn't suffer. Preferable to what we did, yes, but at the same time, you still have lives lost. You still have a sorely mismanaged state with a puppet government put in there by the U.S. that's not working out very well, and that right now is in the throes of possibly collapsing again because Obama's too spineless to do anything about it other than send more weapons to the same people destabilizing it only across the border in Syria. So I can give Trump credit for being a good candidate as compared with the other people that were in the GOP field, other than Rand. I liked Rand best. And certainly better than the Democrats. Jim Webb possibly an exception. Jim Webb was good. But at the same time, if you vote for Gary Johnson or whatever, Hillary wins. It's not even an issue. Here's the other reason. I am in the state of Vermont. The state of Vermont during Obama's re-election bid, I think, went 75% in favor of Obama. Hillary Clinton will win the state of Vermont. My vote here doesn't matter except to push the Libertarian Party above that critical threshold at which they can participate in the debates, and there's no fucking thing that the two parties can do about it. Once that happens, we're golden. The Libertarian Party will skyrocket in support because you put somebody who understands the Constitution, who comprehends all of these other issues, and who says, hey, our tax plan's are better than the Republicans. Our plan on guns is more conservative than the Republican Party. And by the way, we don't hate gays. We don't have a fucking problem with abortion. That party is going to suddenly become a major party, maybe the major party. It could push both of the others to the sidelines. So why would I waste my vote on Trump, who can't possibly win the state of Vermont, even if he rises 20 points in the polls, which is within the realm of possibility? He'll still end up losing Vermont. If the polling comes up to the mark, and if there's there are two situations in which I'd support Trump. Okay, I'll qualify that. There are two ways I could support Trump. Number one, he were to put Ron Paul in as his VP, as his running mate, or Rand. If he did that, I could consider supporting him, because I'd say that's something that can potentially temper his message further towards liberty, further away from authoritarianism. That might be acceptable, because that might actually be able to solve the problems with our country. I think there's still a possibility it wouldn't go far enough, but it would cause me to be more attracted to the ticket. Like I said, there's no chance Hillary couldn't do anything to make me vote for her. Neither could Bernie Sanders, because he wants to screw blue and tattoo me fiscally because I'm self-employed. As far as Trump, he actually wants to give me a tax break. That's very welcome. Trust me when I say that. Uncoupling self-employed individuals from being considered corporations that just don't have the money to hire a bunch of attorneys and clerical workers to do their taxes. That's great. I like that, but that's the fiscal message. That's just one part of the platform. The other thing that he could do to gain my support would be situational. That is, if it came down to the line in November and it looked like it was going to be an extremely tight race, and there was any possibility at all that Trump had a chance of winning Vermont, and I knew that my vote potentially could literally tip the balance of the whole election, yeah, I'd vote for Trump in order to keep the Democrats out of office. I almost said Democrats there, I suppose it fits. But that is so unlikely. There is such an infinitesimally small chance that that will happen, because there's such a tiny chance that Vermont will actually even become a swing state. I think California and New York are much more likely to become swing states. I mean, Trump is doing as well with Hispanics as the polls claim. He could flip California. Trump is from New York City. That one blue segment of the state is really all he'd need to be competitive and turn into kind of a swing region in order to win New York State, after which he wins the election. There's no chance Hillary could have against him. But Vermont is probably not going to be that tipping point. If I were living in Iowa, or across the Connecticut River, if I was living in New Hampshire, or down in Colorado, or something like that, that might make me rethink things and vote tactically. But if there's no fucking possible chance, and the polls will almost certainly reflect this, Hillary Clinton will probably pull in 65% of the votes in Vermont, no matter how badly she does, because the state is run by Democratic partisans. Not anti-gun Democrats, which I'm very thankful for, but Democrats nonetheless. Let's say high tax, high spending, liberals, a little closer to classical liberals. They don't have a stick up their ass about shotguns and hunting rifles. They don't call them weapons of war. But they're still in charge. I mean, there's a supermajority of Democrats in our legislature. Our governor is a Democrat. The next governor will probably be a Democrat. It would take quite a bit of effort to push it towards more kind of swing state status. In which case, yeah, I could see myself potentially casting a vote not for the Libertarian Party. But unless that's a possibility, and the chance is almost non-existent that that will happen, what reason would I have for not voting for, number one, what I believe is the best party, the only one that's actually serious about dismantling the surveillance state, the only one that's really serious about defending the Second Amendment, the true anti-PC party of, who fucking cares about all the affirmative action needs to go, all this bullshit's just a bunch of bullshit. Why wouldn't I vote for them? I want to help them get over that threshold. It doesn't even really matter to me which person is nominated by the LP, because the situation right now is that millions of idealists are buffering the Libertarian Party. If they get over that threshold, the next election, when they become viable, it will be far more vicious and competitive. the weeding out process of who ends up becoming the nominee will be far harder than simply Gary Johnson was the nominee a while ago and was a governor once, and so he's, head and shoulders above all of his competition. McAfee and Peterson are unlikely to actually be in that slot. It's going to be Gary Johnson. Gary Johnson, oddly enough, is almost closer to being like a slightly libertarian progressive. That's okay with me, because on taxes, he's not like that. He believes in some level of social welfare. So do I. I'm a pragmatic libertarian. I'm not saying we need an Ayn Rand objectivism world in which there is absolutely nothing but corporate control, because that's not libertarianism. At least not in the modern sense. I just want to respect the Constitution, not have to pay through the nose for everything, and largely be left alone. That's essentially what libertarianism is to me. Respect for the Constitution, respect for individual liberty, to a lesser degree, respect for state and municipal rights as well. The states have been put upon by the federal government too. I support the whole Constitution. I don't want to see gays and lesbians discriminated against. I also don't want to see any form of gun control passed. So it's the old adage, I dream of the day when a gay couple can guard their pot farm with automatic weapons. That's the libertarian ethos of the modern age. And I like that. I support that fully. I don't care what people do as long as they're not impugning upon my right to do what I want to do. It's the non-aggression principle at work. And it can work. With a little bit of pragmatism, sort of tempering it very slightly, it can work quite well. I think you'd be quite wealthy and prosperous, and it would be far better than simply, we'll reform the tax code. We'll audit the Fed instead of just fucking abolishing it. We'll look through the budgets of these federal bureaus instead of just getting rid of them since they're fucking useless. We'll repeal this little piece of gun control legislation instead of why should the government be passing any. We'll legalize pot instead of why can the government illegalize any of these substances? We're fucking consenting adults. We should be able to put into our bodies whatever the hell we want to put into them. Not just, gays can marry, but why should the state even determine who can marry in the first place, regardless of what consensual adult arrangement is being made? See, all of these things, I don't trust the government to make these decisions. And do you trust the government in its various incarnations to even control the border, wall or not? Look at what Obama's doing. He's completely ignoring the concept that we even have a southern border. And there's nothing guaranteeing that even if Trump gets his wall and we deport 10 million people, we won't just have the fucking problem again. It would be far easier to address the crisis that led to this. Obama wouldn't be able to bring in a bunch of so-called refugees into the United States if Obama himself hadn't fucked around in Syria to begin with the FSA. We wouldn't have a problem of people fleeing up here because they're impoverished and starving from other countries in the Latin states if it weren't for all the drug lords destabilizing these countries because we have a drug war going on. We are the agent of our own misfortune by allowing the government to do such things. And corporations do to a lesser degree. Libertarianism is not corporatism, no matter what some leftist wants to say. Not even remotely the same thing. I can compete with a corporation in a libertarian system, but there's no fucking way I can do it under a corporatist system. Because I get screwed when it comes to, I can't write off everything that I ever bought as business expenses and pay a negative tax rate like Walmart can. That's corporatism. The Democrats love it too. They do the same thing. They claim to hate corporations. They really love them because they're the ones funding their campaigns. So no, I'm not going to vote for the Democratic or Republican parties right now. I don't dislike Trump. I don't have a problem with Trump's message. His nativism and populism is superior to the other people within the major parties. That doesn't mean that it's superior in my mind to the libertarian ethos. And I'm not voting based on short-term things. I'm voting long-term. That is, the Libertarian Party, should it get over that threshold, will fundamentally overthrow the established political order in the United States. The two parties will either severely reform their message or they will fall by the wayside until they do. That's what I want to see. It's not an issue of, I want to overthrow part of the GOP establishment and get someone in there who's kind of a populist. That's just one part of one party. I want the whole system reformed. So it doesn't make sense for me to make do with Trump, good as though he may be compared to all of his competitors, unless there is a very compelling reason for me to do so. Right now, that reason doesn't exist. Right now, my plan is vote for the Libertarian Party. Things may change. Right now, if I were to vote today, I would vote for Gary Johnson. That's about all. Peace out.